Tim, we meet again. Glad to have you back on the Alexander Hour. If anybody that watches us knows that we discuss politics, and in particular, what you're interested in most is the current race for district attorney.
Correct.
And you made no secret last time, not a big fan of the incumbent. And I'm assuming you're here to give me some information about her that you've been working on. So you want to tell me what's going on a Sunday? What's up?
Yeah, so, kind of pick up where we left off last time. Because I retired from that office up there, from the district attorney's office in September of 11, I still love the district attorney's office. I just despise the current district attorney. And I nothing back about that. However, whenever I want to present something, I want to do it factual, not just Tim's opinion. Now, we may get into opinions. However, the couple of things we're going to talk about today is all factual. Anybody can follow my footsteps and they will obtain the exact same information and they will come to the exact same conclusion. So this isn't just Tim bad-mouthing Tonda. This is the facts. And the first one is something that I've never seen before. There's 254 counties in Texas. I did not call all of them, nor do all 254 counties have a district attorney. Out in West Texas, there may be one DA for 3 or 4 counties. However, let's just say there's 240 DAs in Texas. I did not call all of them, but I called a lot of DA's offices across Texas to see if there's any other district attorney in the state of Texas that has done what Tonda has done. And to me, it's just a slap in the face of the Van Zandt County citizens. Not just him. I mean, if you're a Van Zandt County citizen and you watch this, you're going to see why. One reason that I really dislike Tonda. Tonda has a king, or in her case, a queen mentality. And she has this belief that she has some right to entitlement because she's the district attorney. In fact, she doesn't. She was supposed to be working for the people. But I'm going to let the people see how she works for them. So,
well, before you get into this, I wanted to have an authentic reaction. We haven't discussed this stuff. And again, to reiterate, this is stuff that anyone else can find out if they want.
That's correct.
And so how did you, this first piece of info we're about to discuss, how did you come to have knowledge?
Because I'm very vocal against Tonda, I have a lot of people that contact me. And a couple of months ago, I had a gentleman call me and say, "Hey, Tim, have you seen this vehicle that Tonda drives, this Mercedes?" And I said, "Yes, I've seen her in it once, but I don't know anything about it." I'm assuming that it's her personal vehicle because in the history of Van Zandt County, no district attorney has had a county-provided vehicle. However, Tonda Curry has purchased a Mercedes to drive as a county vehicle. And I'll explain how she paid for it and how she did it and where it is today and what she's trying to do to minimize her exposure to her decision to buy the Mercedes. She's trying to outflank me right now because she knows I did open records request. So she knows that I'm fixing to reveal this. And she's trying to take countermeasures before this gets out, but she's too late.
Is this a Mercedes sedan, SUV?
Yes. So what it is it's a Mercedes SUV. It's a 2022 Mercedes, a little white SUV. And
pretty new.
Oh, yeah. It's extremely nice Mercedes. I guess if you're in Germany, you might expect law enforcement over there to drive Mercedes or BMWs or something. But this is Van Zandt County, Texas. So let me, if I can, I'm going to walk through how this occurred because you have to understand where the money come from and how she did it. So at a district attorney's office, they handle what's called Chapter 59 forfeitures. And Chapter 59s are the seizures. And I'm going to keep it very simple. So if Van Zandt County Sheriff's Department, they go raid a house and there's $10,000 in it and it's drug related, there's a nexus of some form between the money and the commission of a felony, then they can seize it. The district attorney's office then does a civil forfeiture. It's civil law. If they receive the forfeiture, the $10,000, then due to an interlocal agreement, there's a split between the DA's office and the sheriff's department. So I think it's 60-40.
Sheriff's Department.
The sheriff's department gets 60%. The DA's office gets 40%. It was 25-75 for a long time, but I believe they went up on it. So, and the DA's office is responsible for filing the lawsuit. This is one of the few things that a DA does at civil law. The forfeiture is civil. You know, there's the big dust up about the gold bars that we've never got a clear answer on. This could be related to the gold bars. That may be where the money come from in the Chapter 59 forfeiture fund. So,
well, that'll get Facebook rocking, because there's a lot of people want to know about
that's
these
right.
gold
So
bars.
I believe, you know, what happened to the gold bars, I've never heard of anything that crazy, and I've not had time to walk all the way through it yet, but I plan on it. It's on my desk to work on more. So to understand Chapter 59, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to read a little excerpt of the statute itself, okay? The official purpose of an attorney's office, the district attorney's office, is for an official purpose if it is made for any activity that relates to the preservation, enforcement, or administration of the laws of this state. It includes, but not limited to, supplies, prosecution training, investigative costs, equipment, which could be a vehicle. So I'm going to give you a real quick example. When I was at the DA's office, we're going to use DPS as this example. We had some troopers, Jim Rorman, Brady Lunsford, those guys, they got out on the interstate and they were very, very aggressive, and they were very active, and they did a lot of drug knockdown. They did a lot of forfeitures. So the procedure we had was, if they're on the side of the road, they could call me, and I did all the forfeiture work for them, just because I did it a lot more, and officers don't do that many civil things. But if you're with Texas Highway Patrol, and again, let's just use $10,000, they seize $10,000. Whenever the DA's office finishes the forfeiture, then I would carry out to the DPS office a check made out to Texas Department of Public Safety for their portion of the forfeiture. The DPS sergeant would have to send it to Austin, and then it just went in the state general fund. So the troopers who were out on the highway, out on the interstate, risking their lives trying to, knock down these criminals, they really did not see any immediate return. They never seen any, actually. So what we would do is and I'll use a real world example. The troopers were knocking down a lot of loads of drugs and money. So I'd ask them, hey, what can we do for you? Because we're the DA's office. We don't need a bunch of equipment. We're more of a support, and that's what I'd always tell people. I'm a support agency. I'm here to support you. How can I help you? So we would take and buy them equipment that the state would not. For example, Kevlar gloves. Kevlar gloves are very important on searches, because they'll keep you from getting stuck with a dirty syringe. So we took, one of the troopers said, hey, we could use some Kevlar gloves. You got it. How many pair? And we took the money out of the DA's Chapter 59 forfeiture fund, purchased all the Kevlar gloves, and just donated them to the officers. I went out and we passed out gloves. I believe we bought some equipment, maybe a camera or two for them. We had some of the troopers that were real aggressive, and they wanted to go to schools that DPS would not pay for. So we'd pay for their schools, and we'd pay for their entire trip, whatever, so they could go to those schools, because those troopers were really, really out there earning it. And, it was something to, just to give back to them, where we could do it where the state wasn't going to do it for them. So in my opinion, that's what the DA's office Chapter 59 should be for. If a law enforcement agency, let's use a small one like Edgewood PD, if Edgewood did not have the funds for body armor, if I was at the DA's office, they could come to me and say, hey, Tim, can you help us with body armor? Absolutely. And
for those that didn't watch the first episode, remind them what your capacity was at the DA's office.
So I went to work at the district attorney's office. The last 11 years of my 22 years in law enforcement was at the Zandt County criminal DA's office. And I started there, I think it was March or May of 99. and I retired in September of 11. I retired early, had an offer to go to work for Buck Files, an attorney in Tyler, and then able to do my own forensic work. Essentially, I had to put kids through college, and on county salary, you just can't do that. So I had to leave, and I love the DA's office. Now, I'm not going back. There are probably some rumors out there, because I do support Schmidt.
I asked you myself.
Yeah, but I'm not. My days of, gun and badge like that's over with. But I can't go back. But with that said, I love the DA's office, and I started at the Sheriff's Department here in Van Zandt County in 1989. So I'm very pro Van Zandt County Sheriff's Office and DA's office. So,
well, it's important for me that you went back and talked about your experience, because what that does is it tells the viewer that he's not just making some of this stuff up. I know the inner workings of that office.
Absolutely. I eat, breathe, and slept it every day for years and years.
It's a little sidebar, but do you think the current administration is spending that fund the way that you did when you were
No.
for the
Tonda Curry, in my opinion, she's using the Chapter 59. She is an attorney, so she will find the little loopholes in the gray area in a manner that will benefit her. Now, I will make sure that if we're using factual data here, something that everybody can get. However, if it's something that's my opinion, I'm going to make it clear. This is my opinion. So this part is my opinion. It's my opinion that Tonda is doing any and everything she can through the DA's office just to simply benefit herself, not law enforcement. Tonda Curry is a prosecutor. She's not a police officer. Now, she likes to walk around with a gun and badge on because the state says you can, because she's a prosecutor. But she is not a police officer at all, period.
So you're saying it's more of perks for her instead of practicality.
Absolutely.
Because like you said, I'm just guessing that the language of whatever the funds say, she'll find a way to wiggle out of, hey, I bought a Mercedes, but it's the optics for you.
So
is that what I'm guessing right
correct.
now?
There's many times that something might technically be legal, but isn't a good idea. And this is one of them. Technically, could she legally buy a vehicle for her to drive in the line and in the course of duty? Yes. But at the same time, and she's going to use the defense, well, I'm salary, I'm an elected official, again, that queen mentality, that how do we know she's not using this take-home vehicle to do personal things in? We don't, and she knows that. Now, there's a tool that I have access to. There's two types of license plate reader databases. The private sector, which I have access to, being a licensed PI, and then the law enforcement version. And I have ran this Mercedes through the license plate reader. I've not had time to follow up with where it was at and at what dates and times to determine where was Tonda Curry at driving this Mercedes. Was it in an official capacity, or was it her just running around in the Metroplex or wherever doing Tonda things?
So where would the license plate reader be picked up? Things like toll booths?
Well, okay, so the government versions, they do your toll booths, but there's hidden license plate readers all over interstate. You cannot hardly go anywhere anymore without a license plate reader picking you up.
So I'm intrigued by the fact that you went that far to look it up. What do you think the turnaround time is on actually getting that data back?
I have a lot of the data. I just haven't had time to go through it. I still have to make a living.
And you're using that. Are you trying to paint a picture that a lot of personal use in this Mercedes?
Absolutely. So let's talk about, all right, if the law here, which I read that, it's the money should be any activity that relates to enforcement of the law. That's what we always did. That was kind of our standard, is will this benefit law enforcement? Not will this benefit the district attorney? Will this benefit the men and women out there in the field with a gun and badge on, risking their life every day for Van Zandt County? That's what Chapter 59 forfeiture should be going to on it. So the Mercedes she purchased, and I did an open records request on purpose. I waited till she left for Australia She spent over a week in Australia. And I knew an open records request was a 10-day thing and that DA's office would drag their feet. So I intentionally let her leave right after the election, about the 5th or 6th, to Australia before I sent out this open records request. Fortunately, the law's in my favor on this one. The Chapter 59 forfeiture funds that's used as an expenditure, when you spend that money, that means that there's no case still pending. So they can't come back and say, well, Tim, we can't give you this because there's a pending open case. And I anticipated that they would try and throw some roadblocks up. But
how many days do you have to respond to that? Did they have to respond to that? 10, you said?
Yeah, see, technically, you hear a lot of people say, well, you have 10 days. No, you have up to 10 days to provide the data or send the individual a letter that you're going to have to seek an attorney general's opinion. Well, I made sure that I did not put anything in that open records request that needed an attorney general's opinion on it. So about 7 or 8 days into it, I finally get the email back with the information I requested.
So now, obviously, she knows.
Absolutely,
that you're
she knows.
sniffing around about this car.
Absolutely, yeah. And she's taking some countermeasures because she knows I'm coming out with this.
Well, where's the car today?
Well, I'll get there. Let me walk you through what the car is. She bought this car outright. This was not a forfeited vehicle. So I went to the district clerk's office, open records request for any Mercedes seized by any law enforcement agency in Van Zandt County. None, zero. So I knew then that this was a flat out, she wrote a check out of the forfeiture fund for her Mercedes to drive around the county in. So she purchased it outright from Hall Chevrolet GMC, Tyler, the Canton branch. That's old Henry Louis Chevrolet. So she went in there on February the 28th of 2025. So a little over a year ago, she decides that she's the DA and she needs a Mercedes to drive around Van Zandt County in. She didn't go buy a fleet vehicle. Fleet vehicles aren't real nice. Has she gone and purchased a fleet vehicle, which is a law enforcement one? Obviously, there's no leather, there's no creature comforts. Then, okay, well, that is what it is. But no, that she's too good for a fleet vehicle. She's too good to drive what the deputy should even drive. If she was going, to believe she has to have a take-home vehicle. She goes out and she buys a Mercedes SUV on February the 28th of 2025 using Chapter 59 forfeiture funds. Now that money could have went straight to Van Zandt County law enforcement. It could have been used Sheriff's Department. She could have used it for any of the police departments, the 4 constables, DPS, game wardens. All those agencies, they need extra gear. They never have all the equipment they need. Yet, Tonda Curry decided because she's the queen of Van Zandt County and everybody else is peasant, she's going to go buy her a Mercedes to drive around in. And if that doesn't offend the people of Van Zandt County, I don't know what will. Period.
So
now,
your argument, I guess, is, and you're in here, we're one of the poorest counties around.
We're a farm and ranch country.
Economic turndown. People are poor, people are broke, and you're like, hey, I'm guessing the public, this is going to resonate with the public and not in a positive way. They're not going to like this.
No, everybody, and I ran this past several people, and I just give them the scenario. What would you think if you knew that the Van Zandt County District Attorney, Tonda Curry, took money that should be used for law enforcement to purchase her a Mercedes to drive around in as her official DA car? Now, there's never been an official district attorney car. Chris Martin didn't have one. Leslie Porter Dixon didn't have one. John Sickle didn't have one. Tommy Wallace didn't have one. Neither Judge Davis. None of them. There has never been a designated vehicle for the district attorney.
And why do you think that is? You think it's because of the decorum that they wanted to have for that office?
Absolutely. It's again, it goes back to just because something might technically be legal doesn't make it a good ideal. So
well, it was bad enough to where someone messaged you about it and thought it was a good tip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone saw her.
Absolutely.
Have you talked to anyone else? Did they see her riding around the courthouse in it?
I've seen her in it. I honestly give her the benefit of the doubt that she did not buy that with her own, with county money. When I seen her in it one day, and I forgot where I seen her, I was just in passing essentially. I didn't consider that she would stoop that low to spend money that's supposed to go out to our police officers on her a Mercedes. If you support law enforcement in Zandt County, then this should offend you. That's money that she could have spent for new body armor, for more cameras, for training. That's a big, big thing in Zandt County. We have small agencies that do not have a big budget. If she can go spend tens of thousands, $30,000, $40,000 on a Mercedes, she needs to be spending that money to help our officers' education. Let's get our officers better trained. The better training they have, the better their cases are. The better their cases are, the more convictions they get.
Any little thing, any department within the county could go there, maybe ask for it if there was some dialogue.
That's
and
correct.
Get it right.
Yeah, that's like I said, when I was there and the DPS guys, I was working with them, and we were actually doing a forfeiture one night, and it came up that they didn't have Kevlar gloves. So I went to the DA at the time and I said, hey, the guys need some Kevlar gloves. They're going to get stuck with syringes. No problem. Hook them up. That's what we did.
I'm assuming when you would go, well, you're saying, I don't want to assume, you're saying in the administration that you served as the investigator, did you ever get pushback on anything you wanted to buy for the guys?
Never. No, never. That was the way that Leslie Pointer Dixon and Chris Martin both looked at it. Was that, and sure, we had, if we needed school and training, then that's where the training budget come from. Whenever I went to work at the DA's office in '99, even the investigators, we used our personal vehicles. Not until probably 05, 06, 07, somewhere in there. And the first vehicle that I ever had, the first couple, were seized vehicles. They did not cost the county one penny. There were vehicles that were seized, and we put them back into service for us so that we could respond to calls easier and keep the miles off our own vehicles. The thing about this vehicle here, we know that in this document, the financial came from the district attorney's office. So this isn't Tim's opinion on it. But let's follow up with what she's done since then, okay? So I know that she drove this vehicle from February the 28th of 2025, right in that day, because that's the day that a deposit check was put down at Hall Chevrolet. And then there was an invoice sent for the remaining balance, and it was paid on 3/3 of 25. And I have the check number and the PO and the invoice and everything on it. So from February 20th, 25, up until about 6 weeks ago, right about a month before the primary election, she then, and if I understood the story correctly, the Zandt County Sheriff's Department has a narcotics division, as they should. They need more people in it, but they're doing the best they can. So she loans this Mercedes right prior to the election to the Sheriff's Department to be used in any capacity, that it legally could be. Not that she's using it in a way that it legally should be, but that is what it should be done. If you're going to have that type of vehicle or any vehicle, it needs to be used by actual law enforcement. So this is where Tim's opinion is. My opinion is she intentionally loaned the vehicle out to the Sheriff's Department prior to Election Day because she got concerned this Mercedes was going to pop up and bite her. So she loans it out to the Sheriff's Department. I've confirmed they do have it. Now, the key to that is loaned. She let them borrow her Mercedes. Here's what I guarantee you is about to happen, especially once your podcast hits. She's going to sign the Mercedes over to the Sheriff's Department, as she should. Tonda Curry needs to give this Mercedes to the Zandt County Sheriff's Department, let them use it for whatever capacity they need, and then let them recycle it. Meaning take that Mercedes, sell it, and buy another UC vehicle for them. That's 100% legal. That's what should happen. And that is the only ethical thing Tonda Curry can do, because she's done so much unethical of buying herself a Mercedes to cat around Van Zandt County in whenever that money should have been used for law enforcement.
Well, let's play devil's advocate for a second, okay?
By all means.
Let's say that was her intent all along. Let's say she says, hey, my intention all along was to drive this thing for a minute, then figure out who needs it. Maybe she had a plan in place. I don't know. The sheriff's not here. Maybe there's a plan in place. Let's just say that she has a cover story for that and says, you know what? Tim picked the obvious thing that I was going to do. He knew it beforehand. Let's say that is the case. Is there precedent to this? Are luxury vehicles bought routinely in Van Zandt County over the years to turn around and gift to another agency for use in law enforcement?
No, never, to my knowledge. And you would not buy a Mercedes to work undercover dope in. Whenever I was a narcotic agent from 94 to 99, we run old beat up vehicles because that's what matched. You pull up at a dope house in a Mercedes, they're either going to think you're the police or you stole the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, get away from us.
Exactly.
We don't need the attention.
We bought more dope in an old 1976 beat up Chevrolet truck than you could ever buy in Van Zandt County in a Mercedes. It just does not work. And if her intent was to buy the sheriff's department a vehicle, or any law enforcement agency a vehicle to use as a covert vehicle, she wouldn't have drove it for a year and only let them borrow it when the election time came. And the only reasonable thing to do, let's say that the sheriff said to the DA, hey, I could use an undercover vehicle. If I was there at that time and they said, hey, Tim, we need a UC vehicle. I'd be okay. Let's get you something that, you know, that fits the need, which is not going to be a $30,000 to $40,000 luxury Mercedes. It's most likely going to be a 10 or 15-year-old vehicle that matches and fits in the communities in the area that drug dealing occurs.
Do you think she just didn't know that? Like,
no.
Can that be an excuse? I just didn't know that the average person pulling up buying drugs over here selling is driving a 10 to 15-year-old vehicle with mismatched tires and things like that. Is that what you're saying?
No, remember, she's a board certified attorney. She's board certified in criminal law. She likes to harp on that. So she likes to say she's the smartest of the smart, even though she can't win a trial. She's lost 67% of all sexual assault cases she's tried in Van Zandt County.
That's a stat. Say that again.
67% is the stat of the jury trials on sexual assault she has lost.
Where can we get that info?
It's all public. You just have to sit there and pull the cases and do the math. Matter of fact, I think Richard may have that already. Richard Schmidt.
Well, the Mercedes thing, to me, I get what your intent is to say, hey, the optics look bad here. I have a feeling that a lot of people will agree with you. I think most citizens would sleep a lot better at night going, hey, Brady Lunsford and some of the other state troopers or whoever's there now.
Absolutely.
They have equipment to get them home safe. They're out on 20 where bad dudes and women are coming through. Let's get them some good stuff. But this Mercedes thing, and I'm glad you called me because I do agree with you. I think this is going to piss some
I'll give
people
you
off.
a real world example. So Van Police Department, they are working they used to call it STEP programs. Who knows what they're called now. Where Van PD, the guys can work overtimes paid for by the state, probably maybe a federal grant. They can work interstate. All right. And there's a lot of back and forth and opinions on that. However, a lot of those guys may not have, and I'm not saying they don't, but they may not have the training that the DPS troopers have on officer safety dealing with high volume traffic. That is a perfect example of where Chapter 59 forfeiture money from the DA's office, instead of buying her a Mercedes to cat around Van Zandt County in, she could send Van PD guys through classes probably at DPS Austin on how to safely work high flow traffic. Because Interstate 20 is a meat grinder out there.
Do you think the DA's office, let's backtrack to when you were in there, did you guys have a waiting list for stuff that people wanted? Would they come to you and say, "Hey, can we get this?"
Well, there were times. It always, it depended on the forfeiture fund, how much was in the forfeiture fund. It's obviously it's not budgeted by the county. The commissioners have nothing to do with this. That's something else I want to make clear for the viewers. Chapter 59 is not managed by the commissioner's court unless the day comes that Tonda is beat. So in this runoff, if she loses the election and Richard Smith wins from that day forward until the end of the year, when she leaves office, then she has to get commissioner's court approval. However, prior to that, that's the only time. There is no oversight on what the DA can use, can spend that money on, as long as within the state law.
As long as they adhere to the state law.
That's right.
And once she becomes what we would call a lame duck candidate, they strip you from some of that spending power.
That's correct.
Away,
That's correct.
Which makes sense, because emotions run high. Someone could be like,
she would drain that account in a heartbeat. So if Richard wins, he'd go in with zero, where this locks that account up on it.
I would think, seeing this going forward, whether she wins or Richard wins, that if I'm an agency in Van Zandt County and I watch this podcast, I'm going to be like, hey, I want to get on the list, because now people are going to be paying attention to those funds and they're going to want to know where they're spent.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
A lot of the old guys that are still out on patrol, they remember what we did. Jerome Rohrman, who's not here anymore, he's a DPS pilot. He was real aggressive on drug interdiction. We'd send him to schools. We sent a lot of troopers to schools, just because we could do it faster and easier than they could get it approved through Austin. And most of the time, Austin wouldn't approve it. So we could send them to the classes that they needed. That is what you need to be doing with Chapter 59 forfeiture money.
Is there a way we could go find out, as private citizens, like go to these different agencies in Van Zandt County and make a list of what's needed and compare it against what's been spent by the agency, by the DA's office?
Yeah, absolutely. And each agency also having their own Chapter 59 forfeiture fund. Let's say the police chiefs and the sheriffs and the constables, they're all their own administrators. They then can use their Chapter 59 forfeiture money on what they need equipment-wise. But you have to also remember, a lot of these agencies just do not have a Chapter 59 forfeiture fund. They just do not have the money. The DA is the linchpin to all of it, because everything goes to the DA's office. So the DA should have the largest fund of anyone and actually have the less need for the money in-house. So the DA's office should have one of the larger Chapter 59 forfeiture funds and not need as much of it to run the DA's office. So we can then go out and help the agencies. Like Grand Saline PD, they may not have a big forfeiture fund, but if they want new body armor, or they want new equipment, or whatever it is, new cameras for their patrol cars, as long as it benefits law enforcement, you can pretty well do it. But there needs to be a benefit to law enforcement, not a benefit to Tonda Curry to look nice in her Mercedes zipping around Van Zandt County.
Well, I'm a little selfish when you bring that up, because as we sit right here, Highway 80 is about a block
Correct.
to our right, and I have kids that live here, and so I want my little town's officers to be armed with the things that protect them when things go bump in the night. And so, again, not that many people watch this, but the last time you were on was my most watched episode. Some people are going to see this and be like, no, we don't like that. Let's get these funds to the people that need it, not for the sitting DA to have a Mercedes. Yeah, and again, I've told you this before, like, I am as good as the information that comes in here. And I've extended out an offer to interview Tonda. At this point in the race, I don't know why she would come on. And this is not an anti-Tonda thing. Again, you and I met before the last episode. But when you come in and you tell me, because this isn't a live episode, if I thought it was BS after, I wouldn't even put it out.
Absolutely.
And I'll put some of these images up on the screen.
Yeah, I'll leave you all.
But you have it all.
You can have all.
I want to share it with the viewers. I don't want to keep them on too long, but I know I can see some documents over here. It looks like you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I want to talk about one other thing. And this one here, I'm going to have to sidestep a little bit on for the benefit of the family. And we could end up, if I'm not going to use the name of the case, because if I do, I guarantee you, Tonda's going to jump up and down and the defense is going to jump up and down and want to do a change of venue and move it out of Zandt County.